they shall grow not old, as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
Welcome to our online service for Sabbath today, our special ANZAC Day program. We're really grateful to have you here today. I've been pressing into the Word a little bit more since isolation's hit us, and I've been loving how it's challenging me in my walk with God, but also comforting me and taking me to places that are helping to build me up in my relationship with God. And like many people, I'm finding that I resonate and identify with the author of the Psalms. And as I've been rolling through this book over the last few weeks in preparation for today's sermon and Anzac Day, I came across a part of the Psalms that I'd previously forgotten. And for those of you who know me, you know that my first love is music, and I love the instructions that are in the Psalms for music directors. And there's a particular musical instruction for choir directors that's put in the Psalms. It's put in the Psalms 71 times, in fact, and 3 times in Habakkuk as well. But it's called Selah. And Selah means to pause, to stop, and to reflect. And David puts the Selah into the Psalms because he wants the people singing these songs, and arguably the people who are listening, to stop and to pause and reflect on the magnitude of the words of what they're saying. Whether he's declaring God's promises or whether he's, sharing with transparency the reality of his struggles of his world around him or how he's struggling, he includes this instruction, this directive to pause. And it's interesting that in some Psalms, we're getting this direction for an interlude, this Selah, this to pause more than once. In Psalm 46, he says, God is our refuge and strength, always ready to help in times of trouble. So we will not fear when earthquakes come and the mountains crumble into the sea. Let the oceans roar and foam. Let the mountains tremble as the waters surge. Selah. Pause. Take in the magnitude of that. Then he continues, a river brings joy to the city of our God, the sacred home of the Most High. God dwells in this city, it cannot be destroyed. From the very break of dawn, God will protect it. The nations are in chaos and their kingdoms crumble. God's voice thunders and the earth melts. The Lord of heaven's armies is here amongst us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Selah. Pause. Reflect what he's declaring. Then he continues on, come, see the glorious works of the Lord. See how he brings destruction upon the world. He causes wars to end throughout the earth. He breaks the bow and snaps the spear. He burns the shields with fire. Be still and know that I am God. I will be honoured by every nation. I will be honoured throughout the world. The Lord of heaven's armies is here amongst us. The God of Israel is our fortress. Selah. There's so much that's happening in that psalm, and David wants us to take it in. He wants us to pause, reflect, to marinate, to really, resonate with the words that we're singing or we're listening to. And I believe that direction is God-given. I believe that God often asks for us to pause, to stop, to reflect, so that we can take a moment to acknowledge what's happening around us, so that we can take a moment to be still and hear the whispers, so that we can take a moment to grieve or take a moment to honour. And I sort of feel that this is a little bit what like Anzac Day is. It's a chance for us to stop, to selah, to pause, to honour, to take in the magnitude of the Anzac story and what it holds and what it means to the people who were there, to the people who are still there, and for those of us who are receiving blessings in the space of freedom and safety because of the Anzac legend. So today, we will selah, we will pause, and we will reflect, and we will grow individually, and we will grow as a community. Well, thank you, Hilton, for being here today and sharing with us and helping us to understand more and blessing us with your story. So I just want to take a moment to honour you and thank you for that. interested today in learning a bit more about you, and wondering if you can share why reflecting on Anzac Day is something that you believe is important, and then maybe sharing with us what is it that you do on Anzac Day as you pause and you reflect and you remember. Possibly is there instruction that you can give us as we are pausing and remembering today when we're not able to meet up at those, community services and stuff like that?
Well, we could go back in that to a famous Admiral Yeaston Shin back in the late 1500s, and he was ordered that to give up his navy and serve with the army. But he said, why should I? I've got 13 ships. And he put them up against 330 Japanese ships, put 30 Japanese to the bottom ships, put 30 into each other without a single loss to himself. A very famous man. Then he went on to say, right out, the man that fights to the death never dies. And then he went on to say, but the one who fights to exist never truly existed. And I've put that all into context and thought, way back, nearly 1600 years before him, there was a man that walked on this earth as a man. And that was Jesus. And when you look at the story of Jesus, he fought, not physically or aggressively, to put a good word into us, knowing full well that he was going to die. And guess what? We all remember him.
Yeah.
And amazing, whether you're a Christian or not, you know who Jesus was.
Yeah.
So he fought to the death, and he's never died. The other part of the saying is, right, those who fight to exist never truly existed. I ask people this, name me the Pharisees that wanted to be existed to put Jesus on the cross.
I can't.
There you go.
Yeah.
So there it is, proof. I often wonder, Thomas, we know, got as far as India. And there's a region in India that celebrate Christianity every year. I can't remember the name of the town. But I've often wondered, I wonder if the word of Christ through Thomas getting to India got further to Korea or in those places. We know people like Alexander the Great travelled even further. They got there. So this could have happened. So bearing that in mind, I think of the soldiers, the Navy men and the airmen that have fought in wars, and from experience I can tell you now, when the crunch comes, you don't think, well, should I do this or don't? You do it. You didn't do it to exist, but you did it to do a job for the safety of others back here, and that's why we all enjoy our freedom. Now, I used to go to Bible studies. So I'm a bit of a hypocrite but I used to go to Bible studies on a Wednesday night up here with Dave Vanderveer. And I love Dave forever because he's just one of those great guys that respects you and that. And I never fully got the grasp of it until I got baptised recently, and Dave was there. But they brought out where they wanted everyone to attend this movie, Hacksaw Ridge. And I said, no. As an ex-serviceman, I'm not going to that. And I refer to the guy as someone who's close to cowardice. And I thought, well, if he had done his job properly, then he may have stopped the enemy from killing others. And I was just totally against it. But Michael, he rang me one day and he said, Jock's my nickname. He said, Jock, have you ever seen that Hacksaw Ridge? I said, no. Don't want to see it, not interested, don't believe in it. He said, I know how you think, Jock, but do me a favour. Will you please have a look at it? So I looked at it, first time, second time, 3 times in a row. And I straight away thought of Dave Vanderveer. I felt ashamed of what I thought, and I didn't attend that movie. But there is a guy, really, he fought to the death, knowing that what could have happened. It didn't really bother him. He didn't fight for existence, but we do happen to know who he is now. So I think of how many other servicemen that I've probably been a bit rough on and that, and thought, well, yeah, they've all done their little bit in a certain way. And I reflect back and think of those And like I say, I still keep asking the question, Thomas, did you get further, or did you send someone further? So my thing goes back to that. How do I reflect on what do I do on Anzac Day? I'll wear my gongs, attend my dawn service. This year I'm going to miss out, but I'll be down the driveway. I then have a coffee with whatever mates I've still got left that are still kicking. And then I go home and just sit down and take it easy. Have a tear, have a think about what happened to us. But yeah, that's the way I do it.
Thank you for sharing that. I can't even begin to comprehend your experience. Once you live something, you can't unlive it. And I just wish I had words to convey the respect and admiration we have for you and every other Anzac ever.
Yeah.
So thank you.
They're all good, man. It's just really when I just recently had my communion, and I believe you were there too. So many people from up there come down. But I'd just like to say there's one other really good friend I think of. AJ Grant.
Yeah, good man.
We were speaking the other day, great guy. And I remember saying to him, I said, AJ, you would have been wasted here at the Haven. But I said, no, I don't mean you would have been wasted. You would have been good here. But you are better off where you are. You're one of these guys that isn't aggressive, and you'll do so much good. There's so many people in the end will want to speak to someone like you, and you are the right person. And I love him forever for that. We should think about him too. Thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing. And how wonderful is God's timing that, AJ's connection with you has led you to a place where, people can come to you who've had your experience with their brokenness, and you can offer them peace or prayer.
Do a lot of that.
Yeah. So,
Appreciate that.
Thank you so much, Hilton.
Thanks, Bianca.
Yeah, no worries.
And God bless everybody.
On the 25th of April 1915, the Anzac soldiers, Australian and New Zealand soldiers, arrived on the shores of Gallipoli in an attempt to free up the Dardanelles for the Allied navies. They landed on the beach and they were hit with heavy fire. It was a bloody and it was a gory fight, and it lasted a very long time. It actually endured for 8 months, an 8-month stalemate, and many, many, many lives were lost on both sides, the Anzac side and the side that the Anzacs were fighting against. And this epic battle marks the day that the Anzacs were first noticed by the rest of the world, and man, were they noticed. We went from being this fledgling little country that sort of hid behind the skirts of Britain to being this army that produced men and women that were full of tenacity and loyalty and courage and strength and bravery, and that is where the Anzac legend began on that day. And throughout the rest of the First World War, the Second World War, and every other war that we fought, from Vietnam to wars in the Middle East, thousands of Australian and Kiwi men and women have valiantly upheld the legend that's associated with the Anzac title. Some have given their lives heroically, fought in battles and returned home. Some have not. Others were captured, they were tortured, and like their Anzac fellows, some of them returned home, some of them did not. But whether they were fighting on the Eastern Front, the Western Front, in the Pacific, or anywhere else where an Anzac foot has touched, these heroes have altered the course of our history, and we are blessed because of what they've done, and it is a blessing to honour them today. In uni, I had the privilege of taking up an extra subject called the Modern History Tour, and it literally meant that I got to bank 3 weeks worth of travel in Europe on fee help, and it was just the best thing ever. I thought it was amazing, and basically I just had to turn up every week, listen to a talk, and then pack my bags, go overseas for three weeks travelling around, and promise to write a paper on one particular part of my travel. And I thought it would be easy, and it was easy, swanning around beautiful chateaus exploring the reign of French kings and, looking at all of these beautiful European countries that have this long written established history was amazing for my super nerd history heart. But when we got to the Western Front, I was undone. Sitting and seeing the trenches and putting my hands in bullet holes in spaces where people hid for safety, seeing thousands upon thousands of graves, some of them unmarked, of just these people who had given their lives valiantly, totally took my understanding of Anzacs to a whole new level. And I wasn't ignorant. My grandfather was captured in Second World War, and he was a prisoner of war and survived. Our family is well acquainted with, what happens in war. But being there and experiencing the Western Front just totally changed how I view my gratitude for Anzacs. Their courage and their sacrifice is breathtaking, truly breathtaking. And I can't help but hold them in esteem with the greatest heroes that we've honoured throughout time. In John 15, we're in this part of the Bible where Jesus is preparing for his death, and he's spending time with his most cherished, loved, best friends, and he's imparting all this wisdom with them, and he continually keeps giving them this directive about loving. Loving has to be the way that we function as Christ's followers. We have to love each other. We have to push past the difficulties, and he's bestowing this wisdom upon them in this really loving way. And then he gets to verse 13, and he says, "There is no greater love than to lay down one's life for one's friends." The Passion Translation reads, "For the greatest love of all is a love that sacrifices all. And this great love is demonstrated when a person sacrifices his life for his friends." How powerful are those words? And having just celebrated Easter, we know that Christ gave these words knowing what he was going into. He knew that he was facing death. And so these words that he gave us, these words about giving your life for others is the greatest love that you can have, weren't comfort words. They were conviction words. They were words full and heavy with truth. They bore the weightiest truth that we could ever hold. And I can't help but draw parallels between the way that soldiers would write back to their loved ones, knowing the end is near, and giving them the greatest riches of their heart and being transparent and being honest. And here is Christ doing the same thing. Whether or not these men and women, our Anzac men and women, had a faith in God, they have demonstrated the ultimate love. There is no greater way to be Christ-like. There is no greater way to show up and be love, to give love. Our Anzac soldiers have either given of, were willing to give of, or are currently willing to give of their lives for other people. And that's why today we selah, we pause, we take a moment and we breathe in the totality of what each and every man and woman under the Anzac banner has willingly stepped into. What a bizarre Anzac Day where we're not meeting up in physical community. We don't have a dawn service. We're not sharing physically, in our friendship like we usually do on an Anzac Day together. No dawn service, no parades. But if we choose to look at this through a different lens and change our perspective, we've actually got a really great chance today during this COVID experience to really honour our Anzacs like never before. So I encourage you today to honour them. Pick up your phone, call a vet, call a family member of a vet, listen to their stories, honour their walk, the magnitude of what they went through so that we can be here today experiencing safety and freedom. Get on the Google and learn and share these stories with your children. Let's keep this Anzac legend going and fuel it with stories and honour and respect and keep it going through our children. And as you pause today, as you selah, take up a moment to pray. Pray for their sacrifice. Pray for the trauma that these people brought home. Pray for the people who waited for them to come home. Pray for people who waited in vain for Anzacs to come home. Offer up prayers of gratitude and safety for our living and fighting Anzacs today. And offer up prayers of direction and focus to those who are in charge of our military movements. Whilst we may not be able to share in person today, I think we can still do a lot to honour our men and women, our Anzac men and women. So join me now for a minute of silence as we honour and show gratitude for those who, as Jesus said, carried out the greatest love of all, lest we forget.